So we have this segment that we like to do called
Mhm.
Mel's Must Reads. And
Oh.
because Mel does buy the books and is way more bookish than I am, I'm definitely more the music person. So this has been a great experience for me to like absorb myself in reading, and I'm loving it.
Mhm.
But Mel is going to give you some books that you should read, especially since this is Black History Month and
Mhm.
we want to celebrate the blacks every month, but especially this month. And so, yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
kick it over to Mel to tell you what you should be doing with your life.
Yes, okay, I'm actually so stoked about this. Cuz yeah, I have a lot more books than I've actually my friend made a comment once to me. She was like, "Yeah, buying books is an entirely different hobby than reading them." And I definitely do feel like I could be a little bit of a collector when it comes to books. But I am trying to plow my way through them, and I think one of my goals for this year is to really make a dent in my bookshelf because I feel like I read a lot, but I definitely feel like I have more books than I have like time to read. So I really want to make a dent in my bookshelf. So a lot of these books that I will be recommending, I'm recommending five. Three of them I have not read yet. One of them I am in the process of reading, and then two of them I have read. And so yeah, let's get into it. I'll just show the book and then I'll do a quick read of the synopsis. So, the first book that I want to recommend is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoree Fanone Jeffers. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but this is the cover or one of the covers. And it's a long read as you can see, so it's a juicy one. I think it's almost 800 pages. Um, but I'll do a quick read of the synopsis. So, the great scholar W.E.B. Du Bois once wrote about the problem of race in America and what he called double consciousness, a sensitivity that every African American possesses to survive. Since childhood, Ailey Pearl Garfield has understood Du Bois' words all too well, bearing the names of two formidable Black Americans, the revered choreographer Alvin Ailey and her great grandmother Pearl, the descendant of enslaved Africans and tenant farmers. Ailey carries Du Bois' problem on her shoulders. Ailey is reared in the North but spends summers in the small Georgia town of Chickasetta, where her mother's family has lived since their ancestors arrived from Africa in bondage. Since she was a child, Ailey has fought a battle for belonging that is made even more difficult by a hovering trauma in the whispers of women, her mother Belle, her sister Lydia, and a maternal line reaching back 2 centuries who urge Ailey to succeed in their stead. To come to terms with her own identity, Ailey embarks on a journey through her family's past, uncovering the shocking tales of generations of ancestors, indigenous, black, and white, in the Deep South. Along the way, Ailey must learn to embrace her full heritage, a legacy of oppression and resistance, bondage and independence, cruelty and resilience. That is the story and the song of America itself. So I think it is a saga, I think, or like it is a book that kind of like spans 200 years. So it spans generations, and it's a story, I think, of like family history. It's a story of like, kind of like some of the ugliest parts of American history, but also redemption and survival. And yeah, I think it just really is a story of trauma and resilience. And I think I haven't read it yet, but I've heard great things about it. I know that Honoree Fanone Jeffers is just an incredible writer. And so I'm stoked to get into this one. I probably won't get into it this month because I'm already reading another book on this list, but and another book for the podcast. But I do hope to get into it very soon. And this is for sure on my list this year. So yeah, The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. So the second book up is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston is like just a literary icon. I actually have not read Zora Neale Hurston, but I'm sure we've all heard of her, hopefully. And she was like a really big writer during the Harlem Renaissance. So hanging out with Ralph Ellison and Langston Hughes and them. Um, and yeah, this is like, I think, a really classic kind of piece of American literature and Black literature, and I will read the synopsis. Their Eyes Were Watching God, an American classic, is a luminous and haunting novel about Janie Crawford, a Southern Black woman in the 1930s whose journey from a free spirited girl to a woman of independence and substance has inspired writers and readers for close to 70 years. When at 16, Janie is caught kissing shiftless Johnny Taylor, her grandmother swiftly marries her off to an old man with 60 acres. Janie endures 2 stifling marriages before she finally meets the man of her dreams, who offers not diamonds, but a packet of flowering seeds. This poetic, graceful love story, rooted in Black folk traditions and steeped in mythic realism, celebrates boldly and brilliantly African American culture and heritage. And in a powerful, mesmerizing narrative, it pays tribute to a woman who, though constricted by the times, still demanded to be heard. I have not read this one yet either, but it's definitely on my list. And I love that both of these, the 2 books I just mentioned, Their Eyes Were Watching God and The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, kind of like talk about maternal lineages and this story. They tell, I think, Black history from the perspective of Black women, which I think is really cool. Like they tell the stories from the perspective of Black women. They were also written by Black women. So that's really dope. And actually, most of the books I'm recommending were written by Black women. So shout out to us.
Yes. Black women's history, Black history.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. 3rd book. This is one that I have read. Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She's a Ghanaian author. Ghanaian American author. And this book, similar to The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, it kind of like spans several generations. And it talks about 2 maternal lineages, that 2 sisters who split when they were a certain age, and it talks about the evolution of their maternal lineages from like slavery to like modern day. And I just think it's an incredibly beautifully written story, and another story of just like redemption, resilience, love. So yeah, I'll read the synopsis really quickly. A novel of breathtaking sweep and emotional power that traces 300 years in Ghana and along the way also becomes a truly great American novel. Extraordinary for its exquisite language, its implacable sorrow, its soaring beauty, and for its monumental portrait of the forces that shape families and nations, Homegoing heralds the arrival of a major new voice in contemporary fiction. 2 half sisters, Afia and Essie, are born into different villages in 18th century Ghana. Afia is married off to an Englishman and lives in comfort in the palatial rooms of the Cape Coast castle. Unbeknownst to Afia, her sister Essie is imprisoned beneath her in the castle's dungeons, sold with thousands of others into the Gold Coast's booming slave trade, and shipped off to America, where her children and grandchildren will be raised in slavery. One thread of Homegoing follows Afia's descendants through centuries of warfare in Ghana as the Fante and Asante nations wrestle with the slave trade and British colonization. The other thread follows Essie and her children into America, from the plantations of the South to the Civil War and the Great Migration, from the coal mines of Pratt City, Alabama, to the jazz clubs and dope houses of 20th century Harlem, right up through the present day. Homegoing makes history visceral and captures with singular and stunning immediacy how the memory of captivity came to be inscribed in the soul of a nation. Generation after generation, Yaa Gyasi's magisterial first novel sets the fate of the individual against the obliterating movements of time, delivering unforgettable characters whose lives were shaped by historical forces beyond their control. Homegoing is a tremendous reading experience, not to be missed by an astonishingly gifted young writer. So yeah, I've read this book twice. I love this book. I think it's a banger, and I think that I would highly recommend this book. So yeah, Yaa Gyasi, Homegoing. Okay, 2 more books for the recommendations. All right, the next one is King, A Life. And this one, unfortunately, was not written by a Black woman, but that's okay. Other people can write too. We don't own writing.
Well, I don't know about all that.
This is written by Jonathan Eek, and it is a biography of MLK Jr. And I'm sure, there are many biographies written about this man, but this one promises to bring new insights and a more holistic portrait of Dr. King. So I will read the synopsis. Vividly written and exhaustively researched, Jonathan Eakes' King: A Life is the first major biography in decades of the civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr., and the first to include recently declassified FBI files. In this revelatory new portrait of the preacher and activist who shook the world, the best-selling biographer gives us an intimate view of the courageous and often emotionally troubled human being who championed peaceful protests but was rarely at peace with himself. E casts a fresh light on the King family's origins, as well as King's complex relationships with his wife, his father, and fellow activists. King reveals a minister wrestling with his human frailties and dark moods, a citizen hunted by his own government, and a man determined to fight for justice, even if it proved to be a fight to the death. As Eek follows King from the classroom to the pulpit to the streets of Birmingham, Selma, and Memphis, he dramatically captures the journey of a man who recast American race relations and became our only modern-day founding father, as well as the nation's most mourned martyr. In this landmark biography, he gives us a king for our times, a deep thinker, a brilliant strategist, and a committed radical who led one of history's greatest movements and who demands for racial and economic justice remain as urgent today as they were in his lifetime. So yeah, I have started reading this a couple of days ago. I'm only a couple of chapters in, but I think what makes this book different from other biographies is rather than kind of like portraying Dr. King as a saint, it portrays him as a man and a human with flaws and all. So I'm really excited to just learn more about him and learn more about his life and his history and learn more about the civil rights movement through his story. So yeah. And then this book. Oh, this is like, I don't want to overhype this book. I'm afraid to do that, but this book for sure is like, and I'm a fiction girly, and this is a nonfiction book, and it is probably one of my favorite books of all time. I would recommend this book to every single person on planet Earth, but especially Americans. Every single American, I think, should read this book. And that is The Warmth of Other Suns, the epic story of America's Great Migration by Isabel Wilkerson. Isabel Wilkerson was a journalist, I believe, for the New York Times. And she's also written, I want to say, 2 books. She wrote The Warmth of Other Suns, and she also wrote Caste. And she had a movie come out called Origin, that was like based on her life as she was writing the book Caste. But this book tells the story of America's Great Migration. If you've never heard of it, it is the story of how Black Americans traveled from the South into northern, Midwestern, and Western cities over the span of 30 years. In pursuit, I think it was 30 years. It might have been more like 50 years, but over the span of about 50 years, in pursuit of like better economic opportunities and like better social opportunities. This book is incredible. And it is written, it is historical, it is nonfiction, it is factual, but it is written like fiction. It reads like a novel because it's oral history.
So it's like it's basically the reverse of My Government Means to Kill Me.
Yeah, in a way, because she just
it feels like a real. I feel like My Government Means to Kill Me is based on facts, but it's not. Well, it is. Well, there's some.
It's historical fiction. Right. Yeah. And this is nonfiction. So it is historical, but it, like, the way that she writes it and the way that, the stories are told, I think it reads more like a novel because it does kind of like tell things from the perspective of like oral history and like passing down stories through generations. So I'll read the synopsis very quickly. In this epic, beautifully written masterwork, Pulitzer Prize winning author Isabel Wilkerson chronicles one of the great untold stories of American history, the decades long migration of Black citizens who fled the South for northern and western cities in search of a better life. From 1915 to 1970, this exodus of almost 6 million people changed the face of America. She interviewed more than 1,000 individuals and gained access to new data and official records to write this definitive and vividly dramatic account of how these American journeys unfolded, altering our cities, our country, and ourselves. And yes, I highly recommend this book. It's an easy read. It looks thick, but it's really only about 500 pages, which is not short, but compared to Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Unfortunately, no footnotes. Sorry, Tiffany.
It's fine. It's fine. I got to get over it. I got to get over my addiction at some point.
But she has a references section, which I think is great. And yeah, I mean, I had not heard of the Great Migration, but I think most Black people in America, especially if you live in the North or if you live in the Midwest, like you can trace your ancestry to the Great Migration. Like my dad, I mean, whether he knows it or not, like he was a part of the Great Migration. He left Texas to move to Boston. My mom's family, same thing. And it's just amazing how much it changed the cultural, social, political landscape of America. And I think she just does an incredible job telling this story. So read what you want, but this one has my heart for sure.
Well, thank you for those picks of the month. Yeah. Yay. Honoring Black history and women and Black women. So definitely, head to your library or your local bookstore and pick up all the things and get to reading. Who do we think should play Trey, or what actors would embody?
Stop. No, it's not.
We should have started.
That's why I wanted to, because I had a feeling.